All right. Well, welcome everybody to our very special topic, Blue Table Talk, engaging and empowering conversation. So I am one of your co-hosts. I am Amanda Vital. I am an academic technical assistant with the School of Business and Information Technologies. And with me is always my wonderful co-host.
I'm Felicia Cortez. I'm an event coordinator with the Community Partnerships Department here at CNM. And we will be your hosts for today, but we do have some very special guest speakers. Before we introduce them, I do want to make it clear that this is going to be a safe space and conversation for everyone. So if you are joining us and you have questions, or you're not sure if you can ask them, please engage in the conversation, unmute yourself. You can put questions in the chat, but do recognize that this is a safe space. Everybody here is, we're here for you. We're here to engage with you. So, yeah. Let me see. Also, before we get started, we do have an amazing tech in the background, Douglas. If you have any questions, you can't hear audio, you're having any difficulty with that, please reach out to Douglas and he will be able to assist you with that.
All right, so let's go ahead and introduce our guest speakers today. We have two of our CNM guest speakers, as well as two wonderful organizations joining us today. So we do have Steven Serrano, who is the program director for CASA Q. Next, we will have Leon Powell, who is the bilingual trainer with the Transgender Resource Center. And after Leon, we will have our very own Liz Bennett, sociology faculty and chair, as well as LGBTQIA2S+ advisory board, and Brian Rasmussen, sign language interpreter and advisor, as well as our QCAT student group head honcho. So thank you guys for joining us today. We're so excited to get this conversation started. And before that, Felicia is going to introduce you to a poll that we will conduct.
Yay! So we just want to get a feel and help our guest speakers know if you've ever heard of their organizations, if you're familiar with even our CNM organizations. So you should be seeing a poll on your screen. If you don't, the poll slide is up and you're welcome to put either the number in the chat or your answer in the chat. And we'll just give it a moment here so that way we can see who our audience is. More seconds. Awesome. So you should be, let's share the results. All right, so this is what we got. So good information. So that way our conversation flows. Wonderful. Let me stop our share here.
It looks like our QCNM group is the one that, you know, has the most engagement so far.
Woohoo. That feels good. I mean, yeah. Liz, how do you feel? Welcome.
And in the chat, we have a lot that are all for, so that's amazing, because I wasn't all for. I'll definitely say that.
No, I was definitely not all for.
Yeah, we could only pick one.
Yes, on the poll.
That was why I made it.
Go, Liz.
Okay.
I say definitely to get our student group.
Yeah. Nice. Well, all right, so our first set of questions and the first person we'd like to talk to is Leon. And me and Liz are going to team up and ask you some questions. And if you just want to introduce yourself to the group.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Leon Powell. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, or he, him, his, or any gender neutral pronoun is fine by me. I work for the Transgender Resource Center of New Mexico as a trainer and also a group facilitator. And I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Leon. So we're going to kick off with the first question, which is, what is your organization and what is your primary focus?
So the Transgender Resource Center is headquartered in Albuquerque, but we are a statewide nonprofit organization that provides services and advocacy for transgender and non-binary people, and also education for mainly for trans folks, for non-trans folks about transgender and non-binary people.
Oh, okay,
That's the
wonderful.
elevator speech version of it.
Yeah. The quick little breakdown of what you all do.
Mhm.
Wonderful. I think Liz may have a question for you.
Sure, I can ask the next question, but I also just wanted to let folks on this meeting know that we have been hosting trainings from the Transgender Resource Center for the last several years. That's one of the things that QCNM, our kind of umbrella group for faculty and staff and students to all work together on campus. We really wanted to increase opportunities for education for people who might know a little bit about some of these topics or know quite a bit, but just want to deepen that knowledge. So every semester we have at least one Trans 101 training and one Trans 201 training. And those have been running in Zoom since last fall. I've only seen the one that Adrian did through Zoom so far. But they got those up and running so quickly when everything went remote last year. I was really impressed. And it's actually been really instructive to sit in on those trainings, even to see how we can improve our safe zone trainings that we do here at CNM, because we were slower to get those transitioned to a remote format. So there've been some really good bridges built, I think, between the center and between CNM, and we are looking forward to just increasing that.
I just wanted to also adding to that, if folks took the trainings in the past, we also last year redid the slide decks. So the training for both the 101 and 201 are new. So even if you took them in the past, if you have the chance to take them away, take them again, I would recommend that you do and see what's new in the trainings.
Liz, I have a question. What is the safe zone you just mentioned?
Okay, so, and then I don't want to take all the focus away from the Transgender Resource Center, but I do think there's a lot of overlap in our educational goals for CNM. So Safe Zone is a training that's dedicated to unlearning homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, to becoming more familiar with terms having to do with gender, sex, orientation, sexuality, and to think about how to make our campus safer for all students. And so we began offering those we developed a CNM specific one in fall 2017, and we began running them more regularly from spring 2018 onwards. UNM has offered some, but they were 8 hours long. And so a lot of us were able to sit down and go through that, but it's hard for a lot of faculty and staff to take 8 hours away. So we wanted to make a shorter one that was available to at least give a little bit of an overview for people to start that kind of education and reflection. So we had been running them at 3 hours. When we shifted over to the remote one, that was a lot of time in front of a computer, so we shortened it to 2 hours. People do tell us that they would like to have more time in the training, but again, we're trying to create these regular opportunities for development. And what we want to do is offer our own version of 201 where we can deep dive into some specific topics. So right now I'm working with a few folks to do an hour or 2 hour training that would really focus in on intersex and non-binary individuals so that they could just learn more about that whole set of questions and issues and topics. And we want to do some that might be geared towards HWPS, or for those of you who aren't from CNM, the College of Health, Wellness, and Public Safety, to really look at medical fields and what it's like to go through clinical trials and what it's like to do some of the hands-on learning situations, right, in some of those classes, and what that's like for someone who doesn't identify as cisgender male or cisgender female, with those assumptions kind of coming down on them. So Safe Zone is an ongoing learning opportunity for us at CNM, both those of us who are running it and coordinating it, and those folks who are coming through the programs. I feel like I talk way too much.
And Liz, we had a question in the chat, if you know it offhand. When is this next Safe Zone training?
We don't have one scheduled. We're hoping to put one together for summer. And then for the fall semester, we're going to have some in person as well as at least one remote training. Our last one was on April Fool's Day.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was that's a date people can't forget, though.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get back to talking with Leon. I want to hear more about the Resource Center, since it is something that I am definitely not familiar with, and I would definitely love to hear more about it. So have you seen an increase in challenges or support with your organization through the pandemic?
So the drop-in centers, we have a physical center here in Albuquerque, and we had just moved in at the beginning of March, and we weren't really able to open before everything shut down. So we haven't really had a chance to really be at the new drop-in center. Most of the folks who are facing the same challenges that they were having before, but there's been a more difficult time like getting those needs met due to changes in staffing, hours, and other COVID-related restrictions. It takes longer for people to reach their housing case managers, to see their doctors. Access is restricted because not everybody has a stable way to make an appointment. So even if there is an appointment, it's hard for folks to remember and show up to an appointment. So that's another struggle. All of our support groups also moved online, and that has had both challenges and benefits. A lot of folks didn't feel like they were getting the same kind of support or connection online, so they stopped coming completely to the groups. But then we also started getting new folks who are in more rural places of New Mexico or even outside of the state who were able to come to the support group because it's online. So now as we transition back to in person, we're probably going to be doing a combination of having a group once a month online and then once a month in person to be able to continue serving folks who can only get access online. And also, we know that many folks also struggle with having to move back home with unsupportive family. So folks had to put the transition on hold, sort of like detransition or hide the transition from family in order to avoid, conflict or getting kicked out of their homes. So that's another challenge that people have faced. As far as support, I'm not as well informed on that, unfortunately. I think I do know that there's a lot of been folks wanting to volunteer, but it's also been a challenge because we can only have so many people at a time, and I think there's been a lot of donations made to the Thrift-A-Lot store, for items to sell at the store. Last time I went there was a mountain of donations, which is great. There's always something new to find at the store. So that's a little bit of what I can tell you.
Well, and you mentioned like volunteer. So how would somebody go ahead and volunteer for your organization, and what would their day or their assistance look like?
The best way is we have a form on our website. So you go to tgrcnm.org. There is in the menu, there's a link there to go where it says engage. There's a link for volunteering. So there's a form. There is a process, like we do like to ask questions and see. We want to make sure that people are a good fit for the space, because at Drop-In Center, we do have a lot of folks who are dealing with a lot of complex trauma, people who are unsheltered, people with different challenges, who we want to be really mindful that the people who are going to be volunteering at the center really know what they're getting into, what kind of to expect, and also how to show up in a way that doesn't maybe cause more discomfort or even harm to participants of our center. And there's also opportunities for volunteering at the thrift store itself. There's like I said, there's mountains of donations to sort through sometimes. So having more hands to do that, it's always nice. But I would, yeah, fill out the form and then go through the process of yeah, being interviewed and stuff like that to see what's a good fit. And I think even if people can only do 2 hours a week or a month, even that's, that's helpful. That we can definitely give something for you to do in those 2 hours.
Yeah, I think that would be a great opportunity for our CNM, employee community and even, faculty.
Amanda, it's a little bit hard to hear you.
Sorry, guys. Can
I
you hear
thought it was just me.
See your mouth moving, but I'm not.
I guess that's my cue to pass it on to Liz for some questions.
Sure.
Like,
So we've got a question for you. For folks who are new or newer to the use of pronouns, what do you suggest in terms of how they can learn more about them? I've got a website that I can put in the chat, but
Actually, yes, I was going to share a website and a video because I could give you a 2-hour training just on pronouns. So I would rather share some other resources that I found have been very useful. So here's a website and then a great YouTube video.
we just shared the same
about
one.
pronouns. Oh, great, perfect. So yeah, that's a great resource. And I would just say that something that I benefited from around both adopting gender neutral pronouns for myself and getting used to using them for other people is that it really has made me really think about, what does gender mean? Like, why do we have so many assumptions about things having gender and the way that we treat each other and talk about our emotions and our understanding of the world, just because everything's so binary in the gender binary. So I think having the challenge of changing our language is much deeper than just the words that we say. It's really about the way that we see the world, the way that we perceive ourselves, and our relationship to gender and to each other's genders as well. So it's a worthy exploration.
it is. And you know what oh, go for it, Brian.
We're going to be like cutting people off regularly.
Like, I'm ready.
Something else as far as changing language and culture that is important to think about too is, as an ally or someone who wants to be supportive of people who may have non-binary gender identities or gender fluid identities, is little things like including pronouns in your moniker on Facebook, like what you can see over here underneath my hand, or anytime that you're introducing yourself in a meeting or going to an event where there's an opportunity for you to hold the floor to introduce yourself and include your pronouns. That not only normalizes the process, but it also signals to people that you are supportive and safer to talk to about stuff like that. Putting in your email signature.
That's a great idea. I was thinking about this. This kind of brings up a conversation that my little one had with me. He, it's interesting enough, but he goes to a program that shares a lot of this information. And like I was talking with you guys earlier, reading about how to build allies in our children to our LGBTQ community. And so one of the things that he asked me was, as far as gender wise, what generation did I think that gender biases and gender assumptions would end? And I was just like, my mind was blown. He's 10 years old and he's already like, Mom, when do you think that we're going to get to a generation where there's just, we don't have that. That's not even a thought. And I couldn't respond. I was just like, I don't even know, because if you're, hopefully with you, I'm like, you're the next generation, right? So I'm like, maybe we've got a couple, but yeah, I'm just like, you're 10 and you're mind blown, totally mind blown.
Well, I think that it's interesting too, because in my age people who graduated high school at the same time as me, I think a lot of us can remember a very different world than what we're seeing today. And when you compare that to the leaps and bounds that have been made with, you know, elementary school kids, it's just amazing, and it's really heartening to see, but we still got a long way to go. And I think that that's part of the thing that we often come up against is when, and I don't think that there's ever going to be an arrival point. I think it's an ongoing, I don't want to use the word battle, but sometimes it is a battle, an ongoing effort to create cultural change. It's not something that will arrive at, but it's something we invest in and create daily.
Yes, yes.
So I'm just reading the chat, but Leon, would you mind, you know, saying that kind of out loud to everybody?
Yeah, I was just sharing that when I began, kind of along with what Brian was sharing, that when I began my transition in 2003, I just could not picture myself being out as a trans person, even to people like that I would interact with in my daily life. You know, it wasn't safe or comfortable to do so. So I just imagined I'm going to do my thing, and then I'm just going to live my life quietly and as invisibly as possible to be safe. And now here I am, you know, pretty out and training people about being trans. So the world has changed a lot in just a few years, for sure.
Wow.
It really has. And to kind of piggyback off of what Felicia said, I think because your child is asking those questions, it's going to speed up the process with this new generation. I'm really happy that they're questioning everything. Why this, why that? And those questions are going to lead to a normalization of, you know, everybody is just, you know, who they are. We don't have to have a specific label. You know, it's just who they're going to be. And I think, you know, with our kids, that's definitely going to come a lot faster with their questions.
I also do want to just mention too that while we are seeing those very positive changes, we're also seeing a lot of backlash. Like if you look at all the anti-trans legislation happening, coming after our kids, our trans kids, that's why it's important to be, you know, double down efforts on being advocates and allies, because with, you know, with progress comes backlash always. So.
And Faith, can we touch on some of the legislation so people know what to keep an eye out for, what's going on? I know that some examples that I can come up with off the top of my head is bathroom bills that prevent people from being able to go into the bathroom that they're most comfortable going in. Also, not allowing trans students to participate in team sports, like Mariah just said in the chat. Are there other things that people can bring to the table so that we can help raise that awareness and get the word out?
Those are the main ones that are happening right now. But it also just in the level of your workplaces, you know, what kind of policies are there? Are there discrimination policies? And in your schools, you know, if you have kids going to school or if you work at a school also, outside of CNM, that is. So just looking even within our community, what is going on, where, like, for example, there's a huge influx right now of trans immigrants coming across the border who have no resources, who have no support, who are struggling a lot, and there's not a whole lot of attention being paid over there. I would suggest also signing up for mailing lists, like the Transgender Law Center has a mailing list. The Transgender Resource Center, I just posted the link to sign up for a mailing list as well. That's a good way to, you know, when things start happening, we let the community know, hey, this bill is going to get passed, or we need you to come to this board meeting or stuff like that to show your support for this, or to, you know, show that you don't agree with this other policy. So yeah, really showing up that way is a good way to be an advocate.
I think also incorporating, I don't know how, as an organization or a college or school. I know, again, back to my kiddo, they started introducing books and having books in the classroom that share the differences and have just kind of opening the door. Like, you know, even going back to our Black Lives Matter stuff that was happening, you know, hearing I have mixed children. So with my son, knowing that there are books now out there that, you know, have kids that look like him, you know, I think all of those kinds of things that come into play, and not seeing it as like, this is, how would I put this? Not that you want to bring just focus to that, but incorporating it so that it does become natural.
Sort of on that topic, we have a roundtable session, or more or less a roundtable session, that's going to be at Faculty Focus Day, called How to Queer, or Steps Towards How to Queer Your Classroom. And so the idea is that it's for people who are thinking about how to make their classrooms more inclusive, certainly of LGBTQIA folks, but also in terms of the way that all the different aspects of our identities intersect, right? So if we're thinking about racial or ethnic identity, folks who are undocumented, disability, all these different aspects that we bring with ourselves to the classroom and we don't always see reflected there as students. And so we wanted to call it Queering the Classroom, even though that language might make some people uncomfortable, because it's actively challenging some of our assumptions around the classroom, how the space is used, interactions between instructors and students, but also the content and the language and the images. And so we have some instructors from Chess and we have some instructors from MSE. We might be able to pull in a few folks from BIT and HWPS. And it's not that any one of us has the perfect approach all put together, but that we wanted to start that conversation so that more people who wondered, what can I do? A lot of people say I don't teach about this stuff, right? I teach math. What would I do? Not to pick on the math people, but you know, especially that can feel like a sort of objective neutral space. But then if we step back and look at things like, what language are we using? If there are story problems, what kinds of stories are getting told? We don't always stop and think about the fact that, you know, it's about a mother and a father, or about a boyfriend and a girlfriend, how often we see heteronormative language. And so if we think about how to make changes like that, and then what I'll often hear from people is, that feels weird, I feel uncomfortable, it feels like I'm making something political when I don't need to. And I agree that it can feel nerve-wracking and anxiety-provoking, but at the same time, one of the things we want to share in this workshop is that if we don't change our language, we're also making a statement, right? We're not actually remaining neutral, we're just maintaining the systems that are already in place. And so I think it'll be a fun conversation. I hope that some of you are here today might be willing to come and bring your questions. And we're calling it a roundtable because we really want audience members to share what they do, what strategies they have. We're going to lead off with some questions and goals that we have to, again, show that it's an ongoing process, not a goalpost necessarily.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Yes, for like, yes.
Yes, I think that it's going to be so helpful. And it'll be very helpful, especially for our faculty who, they are the ones who are the face of CNM, because you all see the students all the time. So I think that'll be a great, you know, component to add into the classroom. And hopefully they can, you know, we're used to change here at CNM, so we can adjust.
And not
Kind
to
of
put
just
the onus
go with the flow, yes.
and not to put the onus only on faculty, but I think that something we often forget if we're on the staff side of things is that little things like putting a little safe zone sticker on your office window, or just the way that we interact with students. Like I think of advisement because the Disability Resource Center is closely connected to Connect for advising. And it's little questions, little things that are completely unintentional, the microaggressions, and that shows up across the campus from application up until and past graduation. We have to look at this really broadly and think about the ways in which we might unintentionally be perpetuating things. It's a hard thing to do, but it's so worthwhile.
Vulnerability is super hard, right? But you have to be vulnerable to have that sense of safety, right? And so when we're talking about opening this up, and yes, people, it may be uncomfortable for them, but how do you think everybody who's been transitioning into this has felt for so long, right? Like it kind of humbles you, because then you're like, oh, yeah, I feel uncomfortable. Well, hello. I mean, when you can't be yourself and you can't be authentic and you can't be who you want to be for fear of what the backlash is going to be, or how you're going to be judged, or whatever it may be. I mean, honestly, what a small step for you to take in order to open that door for safety for somebody else. I mean, it's humanity. Like, have that a little bit, you know?
And that brings up a question for me too, Brian, since you mentioned staff. How do we make our offices welcoming when they come in? Because I work in an office where we have a lot of faculty, so we have a lot of student traffic. How do we make the office environment a little more inclusive? Like you said, a safe zone sticker, like greetings when somebody walks in. What's a good kind of general greeting that we can have for folks?
I mean, I think that there's a lot of ways to go about that. And one of the first things I would say is it's important for offices to train their staff around various issues of equity and justice, because I think often what institutions do is that we try really hard to put forward an image that, you know, we care, and this is something that's we're working on improving. But then often what happens is that actions that people perpetuate don't necessarily align with that. And often, I would say, like the vast majority of the time, those actions are not something that people are intentionally doing to be oppressive or discriminatory. It's often things that are coming from a place of unconscious bias. And so in regards to that, training people and having these conversations openly with your staff, I think that that's hugely important, because until we start talking about the various ways in which we might be perpetuating oppressive language or behaviors, we're not going to be aware of it. And I think that along with what you were saying, Felicia, too, as far as vulnerability, a big piece of that is encouraging and cultivating that sense of vulnerability in staff so that they can hear the feedback, receive it. Because often if I misgender someone and they correct me, I find that a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll get upset and worried because they didn't want to be offensive or anything. But in reality, all they needed to do was, hey, thank you for that. I appreciate the correction. Fix it and move on. The minute you turn it into a big thing, it becomes about the person who did the offending, if that makes sense. So training would be one of the big ones that I think is really important. And I know that people who do safe zone trainings would probably be willing, with some advanced warning, to give an hour-long workshop or lead a discussion about stuff like that within departments. Another thing too, just generally that came off the top of my head, and I'd love to hear if other people have something to add to this, would be checking gender. I think often in New Mexico particularly, we have a honorific thing that we do where we say, 1 minute, ma'am, just a second, sir. If we could refrain from doing that. And I think that our culture has moved in a way that just 1 minute or something like that is totally appropriate, that the sir and the ma'am and the gendering actually isn't as helpful as it used to be. And it's okay to let that go.
Liz, do you have any thoughts about how to incorporate that safe zone, you know, in our offices and our environment here?
The sir and ma'am had come to mind while Brian was talking. So I'm glad that that already came up. But just to expand on that, they're not enough, but there are other ways to think about the language that we're using in shared spaces. So how often do you sit down at a presentation and the speaker welcomes ladies and gentlemen. You know, again, it sounds polite, but is discounting some of the people who were there. And there's no reason that we need to say ladies and gentlemen. We can say welcome, saying you guys. We still hear a lot of you guys, which again, I think people aren't saying that. I know sometimes that I still slip into it as well. Try to replace that with you all, make it a challenge. Like Brian said, don't castigate yourself and feel like you're evil if you slip up, but just make it a process. Remind yourself, remind your friends. Erica is saying that she's guilty of you guys. So when you're not in that situation of welcoming people, think about what else could you say? Welcome everyone, welcome CNM, welcome friends, comrades, you know. There's many different ways that we could do that. But I'm also really interested in seeing the language on forms change. So when we have intake forms, how often do they only say male and female? I understand, I've been learning about how there are agencies that require that binary male or female answer. So if we have to have that question on a form, why not follow it up with an additional question saying, how do you identify? Or there are, again, many other ways that we might follow up with some clarifying questions so that people don't feel trapped into just that kind of response. And again, look at our website, look at the photos that are there, look at who gets represented. Look at who gets represented outside of February or outside of June, and what kind of diversity of images are up.
That kind of touches on something about in the office or any workspace, looking around at who else is at the table and who isn't at the table, and you know, how do we fix that? How do we change some of that? And why might it not be working out that we have more diverse voices, more representation, I should say, at the table?
Leon, do you have or does the TGR have anything that is implemented as far as training or for staff? And because I think also taking the opportunity to learn, like you said, Elizabeth, Liz, sorry, I see your name, but to see it, you know, from other perspectives and how they're doing it, because we don't necessarily sometimes have to reinvent the wheel, right? If something's working for another group that's getting implemented, and you know, seeing, well, do you have, like, is it mandatory? Because you know how sexual harassment training is mandatory here at CNM. Well, why aren't other trainings to help the inclusivity be mandatory as well? You know, so I'm just curious hearing that, you know, if there's trainings out there, there's these opportunities, where are they? How do we get them? Because I didn't know until today that those were things that you were working on. And so it's kind of like, interesting, very interesting. So Leon, back to my question with you.
So the question was, if we offer training for staff, but did you mean our staff or for other people's staff?
Yes, your staff.
Yeah, I'm not really sure because I haven't. I mean, yes, we do get training. Like I remember we were given different kinds of training, like around like de-escalation of people, training around awareness of like trauma and mental health issues, stuff like that, in dealing with people, and different kinds of trainings as well. So we definitely get different training, and I don't remember getting a specific training on like pronouns and stuff like that, because we just kind of know that. I mean, that's who we are. That's kind of our life. I wonder, maybe I'm not sure if for volunteers, maybe who are not transgender or non-binary, if they get particular training. I would imagine they do, you know, to understand exactly, how to properly address people, and why some people might go by CC Sir pronouns or FFA, and not to be like confused by that. And of course, you know, the trainings that we offer for other organizations, it's always available. We also are happy to take a look at your forms, intake forms, policies, stuff like that. You can send that to us. We can take a look at it to make sure that it has the most current language, the most appropriate language, and that it truly is trans inclusive.
Another piece just to highlight is it's an informal training in a way. It's an enculturation. I think that people who show up and volunteer or who interact with events that happen through TGRC and other places in the community, that's a form of training too, because you get enculturated into not quite how I would have said it or something like that. And getting into the community, getting to know people and building relationships is really critical.
Yeah, I agree. That's and that's exactly something I was going to mention too, which you kind of already brought up, Brian, is that at the center, which is part of the shift in the culture, right? Like it's not just about doing trainings, but actual shift in culture is that in a way the training happen as we just move forward, and sometimes maybe somebody who's trans but doesn't understand non-binary would misgender somebody, and then so we would have a conversation where it was like calling people in and let's look at this. So there was this culture of like let's really be open and not shame each other for the mistakes that we do, and really have conversations about this, because we're all learning together and growing together, even within our own community. And that is not so much training, just relationship and engaging with each other.
All right, I think, well, we're about 15 minutes out, and this has been a fantastic conversation. I do kind of want to ask the board, how do you see, or how can we help students and colleagues through their coming out process, whatever it takes? How do you implement that? How do you go about being there or supporting someone through that process?
I'll jump in because I'm seeing blank looks. Like, go for it. That's important is to listen. Often, if a person is coming out to you, it's because they feel they can trust you. The other important piece of that, I mean, because I think often we want to fix or help or support or do for, and that's not always the best thing. So the other side of the listening is also being resourced and knowing how to refer to the right resources. What resources are there and who do you ask if you don't know? I don't think that I'm misspeaking here when I say that any of us on the LGBTQ advisory board, which you can find all of our names and contact information on the CNM LGBTQ website, I imagine that any of the staff at TGRC would feel the same way. Reach out to us, if you've got a question or a situation or something like that, even if we don't know, and often that's the case, we know of places to refer people to. I think another piece too is to not think that it's always about being queer. There's other parts that intersect here too, such as religion, family, culture, economics. There's all these other pieces that coming out might impact, but it might not be the most prescient or salient part of the struggle. And so maybe you don't necessarily need to talk to a therapist about being gay, but you do need to talk to someone about, finding resources for hormone replacement therapy, or getting medical healthcare support, or housing, or maybe you're just wanting to get networked and start dating. How do you get connected into that community? I think that that's also another thing that often comes up. So listening without assuming what would be the best response, and having resources are the two things I would say.
And I did drop the link for our website into the chat, so people have that if they're not already familiar with it. We also link to a lot of community resources there. So It's CNM specific ones, and then it's also Albuquerque and New Mexico ones. But at the end of our safe zone trainings, we ask people to think about what they're going to do to be allies or to be better allies. So what are some new practices that have come out of the conversation? And it might come from the content, but it might just as well come from the other participants in that training, because people are doing so many amazing things already. And I think sometimes when people are just beginning to think about allyship, they're worried because they feel like they have to know it all and do it all at once. But it can just be a little bit of education can be really helpful. So we have a map of universal access bathrooms. So all the bathrooms on all the CNM campuses that are not just male and female are available. And so we can direct students to that. But I always challenge people to find out where those bathrooms are in their own building so that they don't have to say, go to this list, but they can say, oh, you know, here's where it is. Here's how I give directions to it. Little things like that are also really powerful things. So I think the more that we can do things like that in advance, instead of having a deer in headlights moment of what should I do in this, you know, now that someone's coming out to me, can be really helpful.
Well, that's super helpful information, guys, to really, you know, start becoming an ally for not just our students, but for the community at large. And I think we might want to mention a wonderful project that Jenna, I believe she's on here. You're muted, Felicia.
I was like, is she on? Do I get to spotlight her? Jenna, where are you?
Yeah, we need to spotlight Jenna's project because I think that was a wonderful
It's
idea.
J Muscarello 1 is me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mute button.
That's okay. Do you have a camera? Do you want to?
Yes, yeah, we could share.
Fantastic.
So yeah, we'll let Jenna share with you the project that she implemented with the help of Brian and Liz, I believe was a big help too. So we would love for her to just describe this project for the month of June that hopefully maybe we can increase, you know, for other months.
And a big shout out to Angela, marketing office. She's also very helpful.
Yes, Angela helped also. So my name is Jenna. My pronouns are she, her. I am a staff member on campus. I work for ITS department, and I'm also a student. Let me start my video here. That would help. Okay, here I am. I'm actually in the office today because I was up running around campus hanging up some more wraps. But would it be possible to share my screen?
You should be able to.
Okay. So the project I'm working on is called Love Across the USA, and it was started by a fiber artist and activist named London Kay, and she makes these like insane crochet murals, like huge. The last one she did was for she made of Kamala Harris. So her most recent project is she started these, they're called love wraps, and it's basically like a crochet blanket that you would wrap around the tree. And it's also called yarn bombing, which is basically either knitting or crocheting around something that's in public. So if you go to the website, and I'll put the link in the chat also, the goal was to get one in every state. So right now we are across the world right here. So I think she said there's over 100 right now. So if you zoom in to our lovely New Mexico and click on this little heart, you could see.
Jen, I don't think you're sharing.
I'm not sharing. Oh no. Okay. Sorry about that. My computer here is just, okay, there we go. All right, let me close out of here so we can get the effect. Are you able to see it now? Yes, okay, cool. So, so as you can see right now, there's across the world right now. So we can zoom in over here to New Mexico. We need Arizona to chip in, but if you just click on that heart, there's CNM is on the map. And this is, right now it's in front of the library. So I just put up 2 more. I put one on Cole Ave in front of the CAT building, and one in front of the TM building. So I've been trying to get them, the pictures uploaded here, but the Wi-Fi on campus is awful. So let's see if I could just share them on my phone. Nope.
While you're doing that, I just want to say thank you. I shared it with
Yeah.
other yarn artists. I
Oh,
don't know if there's
awesome.
add to it, but
Yeah,
I'm so
I hope
happy.
we get more. So let's see if we could see. So this is on Cole, it's backwards. But this is the non-binary flag I did. And then I also did this one for Black Lives Matter, because I feel like you can't have pride without Black Lives Matter. So I also have one more that I haven't hung up yet. So I need suggestions of where to hang it, but let's see. So this is for, oops, upside down. This is for the trans flag. So that one I'll be hanging up next.
Oh, I
think
love
little
it. I love
Thank you.
Yeah.
You must
little
be
things
like a master with your, because oh my
Mhm.
God.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun. So I brought another one that's in process. I just started doing another rainbow one, if you want to see. So
Oh,
you
wow.
use like a really big hook so it goes quickly. But I've been using up a lot of my yarn stash.
I will be happy to donate to your yarn
Oh,
stash.
awesome.
Because I am not that talented, but I
Yeah.
will be happy to donate to your yarn.
Yeah, I always accept yarn donations.
Oh, and it looks like Mariah from MCO, she has tons of yarn.
Yay!
More. So I think that's wonderful. And I'm so glad, Jenna, that we have some energy like yours here at CNM to where we can do these amazing projects. And it really helps. It's those small steps that helps us become more inclusive.
Right.
Um,
I like
and
that it just brings that visibility and that this is a safe space and that you are seen and you are represented. And I think that's so important, especially for our younger students coming in. Also, we've been out of school for so long, we've been all at home. So coming back to campus now, it's important to feel seen, I feel like.
yeah, and especially with such a welcoming message. I think when we welcome students back in the fall, seeing all that is just it's gonna enhance their experience more and, let them know that we welcome them all with open arms.
Yes, well, thank you.
100%. Oh, heart. Wonderful. Well, is there anything that we did not cover that we want to, shed some light on? Liz, Brian, do you have anything that you would like to share or anything that's upcoming that we should be aware of? And so that way we can, again, because it starts with us, right? We're here to support, but, knowing what's out there and where to find it. And that way we can show up and we can be allies. If you want to share that in the chat, you can verbally share it. And also for everybody who joined today, I will be sending a follow-up email with all the links that were in the chat, with anything else that you would like to share. Leon, if there's anything that you have that you can share with me as far as information or pamphlets or flyers, I can also send those out. So throwing it out there.
I could send you
one thing I would point people. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I could send you, and I think I actually have it somewhere here. After the Trans 101 training that we give, I send a bunch of resources for folks. So I can send you I just put them up in a Google Drive so people can just go in there and download them. Like I created a list of a bunch of resources for people to learn more about just about everything that we talk about in the training. So let me go ahead and put that here in the chat. And I just, again, just encourage people to attend the training that we offer, whether it's at CNM or if there's another opportunity in other community groups. Sometimes we give them a public to everybody like on Facebook and stuff like that. So yeah, just come to one of our trainings to get that. And my Zoom froze, so I can't use the chat.
You can email it to me and I'll get it
Okay.
that way. At least you're frozen in a semi-normal face.
Yeah.
if that makes you feel better.
I would add to our website, we also have a Facebook group and a lot of community events that are happening. I'm trying to post there. So it's kind of like a one-stop if you want to know, where can I go and connect? There's a lot of resources. There might be a contingency in the Pride Parade if we are able to have a Pride Parade. Albuquerque Pride is talking about doing it in August, so stay tuned. We'll have more information about that if we're going to be able to participate or not. And the other thing I was going to say is a long-standing tradition that's a part of Albuquerque Pride is the Candlelight Vigil, and they're going to be doing that tonight at Morningside Park. And for those of you who may not know, but Harry Hay, who was one of the early members of the Mattachine Society and the founders of the Radical Fairies, he helped start the Albuquerque Pride Parade back in the 70s, and it ended at Morningside Park. So if you ever go and you see the metal statues of trees, those are dedicated to those first marchers who marched up Central back in the 70s. So go, light a candle, listen to the speakers. I'm pretty sure the Gay Men's Chorus will be singing. It might be a nice way to connect to the community again.
And what time is that?
I'm pretty sure it starts at 7. If you just go to Albuquerque Pride's website, or if you get on Facebook, I've posted it in our QCNM group.
Okay.
You might just Google Albuquerque Candlelight Vigil for Pride, and it should bring up the details that way too.
Perfect. Thank you. Liz, do you have any closing remarks, statements, ads, love, all of the above?
I would just say that if people have specific things that they would like to learn more about or see in our trainings, send an email to myself or Brian, and we can try to work them in. We're always interested in expanding what we're covering. So, and we're always interested in feedback. And if you didn't see it, you could, I put in the chat box that one of my long-term goals and dreams is for CNM to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion center that would have space dedicated not just to LGBTQ students, but our Black Student Union could have a space. We don't all need our own building, but it would be great to have a room and to have it be a dedicated space, not one that we sign up for on a changing basis, but one where there can at least be a small library of books or other resources, a spot where students can feel comfortable knowing that they'll be welcomed, that they can get information, brochures, and know that there will be people who can talk with them about whatever's on their minds. So if it comes up and CNM asks what you'd like to see in the future, say that you want to see that for our Dreamer students, and say that you want to see it for all of our students.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, I agree.
I love
That
it.
would be so amazing.
Yes, it would. Well, thank you so much again for coming to the table and kind of just sharing what we don't know and what we can know, and the opportunities that are there. You know, they're literally in our everyday lives. There are opportunities for us to be more inclusive, be more compassionate, be more, have empathy for what somebody is going through, or what kind of help, safe space that they need. And thank you everybody else who joined us and taking the time during your lunch. I hope you got a snack or something to hold you over. We really appreciate it. And Leon, you're back. Okay, you're not frozen anymore.
It finally died.
Thank you for all you do in our community, and for being here today and being willing to share, what you do and who you are and how you help in our community. It is.
Thanks for inviting us too. Like Brian said, Amanda and Felicia, we appreciate the space.
Yes. And maybe we can have a follow-up Because I know,
Oh,
Liz,
yeah.
you mentioned something in October. Is it October? Maybe we can.
Sure.
We
Have it-
can totally follow up. We don't just have to do this for June,
Yeah.
you know, it's every month. Well, thank you guys. I really love it. You guys really, it was very informative for me, especially in how I can interact with people in my office. So we love having you guys at CNM, and Leon, thank you. I'm so glad I've met you virtually. Hopefully I'll
In
go down and
person.
go thrift shopping.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful. Have a great
And I
day.
posted the link finally on the chat
Oh,
that I
okay.
mentioned.
I
Yeah.
will